Hi. Mr. Goulding back there was making scared noises, like something was bothering him. He was like he was calling for somebody or something, like kind of a thing. I can't reproduce that one, but I could do chickadee. I could do canary. Not roller canary, though. That one I never learned. I'd have to be able to vibrate my vocal cords to make the air, because they have that, to get that roller effect. If you've never heard a roller canary, then I can't help you. YouTube's probably got some up. I mean, everything's on YouTube now, isn't it? And the way you make those whistles, and there was a guy in the clinic yesterday who was a bird watcher, and he and a group of fellow bird watchers have been compiling the biggest compendium of birds of Saskatchewan ever. And he was expressing a little concern that the new government wasn't going to help fund it, and they were really hoping to get funding so that they could get a copy of it, get it published and get a copy of it in every school in the province so that kids could identify wild birds. And I really love birds. I'm not real good at identifying them. I've never gotten involved with a bird watching group, although I'd probably enjoy it. It just, yeah. My shirt was uneven. It bothered me. This is the trouble with having a video in front of my face. What I'm doing is I wind up looking at myself all the time. So he wanted to get these books into the schools. But I did for him my chickadee call, and he was just like, wow, I don't know how you do that. And I tried to explain that I put my tongue behind my teeth, and the tenser the tongue, the higher the pitch, the looser the tongue, the lower the pitch, but he'd never done it before. I mean, I learned to whistle that way long before I learned to whistle with my lips. I can now whistle nicely with my lips. And so forth. Anyway, I do that a lot with the parrot. He and I will whistle back and forth, and he'll sometimes start off with a phrase he knows that I recognize from a song, and I'll wind up singing the next line, and then he'll do his best version of the line after that, and we'll sing phrase by phrase through a song. Like the other day, it was Jingle Bells. I was washing dishes, and he actually started like that, and then says I, and then he does some garbled version that I just assumed was the next line, and we just kind of worked our way through phrase by phrase. And he's not very good at remembering the melodies, but we're having fun, and this is what's really important, is he's having fun, I'm having fun, we're interacting, it's friendly, it's stimulation for the bird and me. I mean, you should hear him honk in the mornings when Dan leaves. Oh my goodness. Some days I just want to throttle the little bugger. He could be a real little prick. But, I've got my days too. We all have our days, and he needs a home, and he needs a family, and he needs it to be secure, stable, and long-term. And I took him in my house knowing that he needed that, and soon discovered that he needed it more desperately than you'd expect from having been through too many homes. So even though he does stuff like he's doing right now that literally cause me pain, I'm determined to stick by him and be his forever home. Even though I'm not necessarily getting out of it what I put into it. And I may not necessarily be the best home in the world for him. The only case, though, where I would let him go is if I could see with my own eyes that it was going to be a better home. It would be a home with a number of other African greys of his subspecies, and including a potential mate. If he was going to a sanctuary where he had room to fly, a flight cage aviary with a mate that he could then breed and raise babies, that would be something. And they fed him properly, and they weren't a money-making operation. They were in love with parrots operation. I knew one breeder like that. She had She had a corner of her house fenced off that she had the birds mostly in, and the ones that had to be in cages were in cages. The ones that didn't weren't. There was an opening she could open to a flight cage outside, and she also brought birds out of the cage into the main part of the house, which was a large, open, ranch-style house. And she would let these parrots be part of the family there in that house, and then ones that couldn't be part of the family either because they were new or they were broody or whatever the reason, they had their own large, spacious cages. They were all fed good, fresh, wholesome food. They were all trained and taught and raised with positive reinforcement. And I would gladly send Samuel home like that. She retired. She quit for her own reasons. Or maybe she didn't and she just wanted to be, I don't know. Yeah, anyway, that's not an option for Sam. So we're not going to try to do that. We're just keeping him. And if one day I'm bussing around the countryside and I run into someone who's actually be a really good home for him and he looks like he'd really like to be there, I would let him go. But not just because he annoys me. He needs a home. He needs to be home. Geez, what was I going to talk about? I was going to talk about why I don't have kids. Yeah. When I was young, I, like most young women, assumed I'd be a mother one day. It was just a given that, we were taught that a woman's nature is to give birth, and that a woman is not fully female until she does, and that all women must be capable of mothering because it's in our nature, and desirous of mothering because it's in our nature. And certainly I like kids. I liked them a lot when I was younger. I'm not as fond of them now, but it wouldn't take much for me to really like a kid. Does anybody like toddlers? I really don't care for toddlers. And babies, well, I think you have to be pretty deeply connected to them to like them. But then again, a doctor who just gave birth brought her newborn into the clinic to show off to her patients. It was finally had been enough days since the baby was born that everyone felt that it was okay to expose the baby to people. And into the clinic comes the baby dressed in the most adorable teddy bear onesie. It looked like somebody had skinned a plush teddy bear and dressed the kid in it. That's kind of gruesome, but it was so cute. Little fuzzy legs, little fuzzy arms, little fuzzy ears around his head, and his little baby face sticking out. And she had unzipped it because it was warm that day, and so his little body was like his little fisties were out through the zipper. But you could still see the teddy bear effect. And his little fisty, he was a little boy. She named him a Hindu name that meant little prince or little lord of lords, and that was awfully sweet. And the other people around me just seemed transfixed by this small thing. For me, the teddy bear onesie was adorable, and the size of the baby was astonishing. I mean, so tiny. It was 3 weeks early. It was still not due to be born for another week, and here it was. At the age of 3 weeks, he was. And so, he was quite tiny, and I thought I found that fascinating. But I didn't have that, I didn't have that effect. I mean, you bring a puppy in the room, and I melt. I go, oh, puppy, I want to pick the puppy. They don't do that for babies. But the little girl, there was a little girl there. She'd lost a leg to cancer, and she'd lost her hair to cancer, and she was still doing chemo. And she was just glommed onto that baby like it was the whole world had vanished. I was in love at first sight. I thought, yeah, I really don't have natural mothering instincts. And I was about 24 years old, and I'd been thinking hard about motherhood. I'd been waiting to get pregnant. I'd been carefully making sure I didn't get pregnant because I didn't feel like I had the temperament at that time to be a mother. I had a terrible temper and threw nasty fits, and it was very cruel when I was in a temper. God bless my first dog. She was abused. I will freely admit now in my maturity that the way I treated her was abusive. And I kind of instinctively knew it at the time, but I felt pressured to force this dog to be well trained, and I didn't know better. I mean, my parents had taught me spanking as a way of training. We had spanked our family dog as a way of training. Shove his nose in it, whack him with a newspaper, whack him with your hand, that kind of thing. And I had a rule that I wouldn't whack my dog with anything other than my hands, so that I had to feel the pain that I was dishing out. But instinctively I knew that this wasn't right, and certainly she was about 2.5 years old when I finally reached a point where the dog had become incorrigible, and I had increased the negative reinforcement to where I drew the line, and I was like, this can't go on. And I had to keep the dog, and I couldn't live with the dog, and somehow I knew this was all on me. I had to figure it out, and that was when I picked up a dog training book and finally learned about positive reinforcement and about the fact that the animal just doesn't give a damn what you want it to learn if it doesn't like you. If all it's going to get out of it is a cessation of pain, that's not much motivation. If, on the other hand, when it's doing something right, you let it know, and you do things that make it smile, then you've got an animal that's motivated to learn and getting really good clues as to when it's doing what you want from it. So that was the basis of what I learned. And I could apply that to children, but I really didn't think I had the patience. And certainly, I didn't have the partner. I didn't want to have a child all by myself. I mean, humans are not going extinct anytime soon, not even white ones. Sorry all you Caucasians who are so proud of your pale skin. You're not going to go extinct. I know you're not going to go extinct. You know why I know? Because you're attracted to other pale skins. Yes, you are. If you weren't, you wouldn't have this crazy attitude that, this is somehow something special about being white and blonde that requires preservation. It doesn't. I mean, okay, so picture a world in the future where everybody's got a good tan, everybody's got dark brown or black hair, everybody's got almond eyes, and I remember a time when they predicted that we'd all have almond eyes because, there's so many more Orientals around, and it's a dominant phenotype. Do you really think anybody's going to look back at pictures of white-skinned people and go, oh, we've lost so much? Of course not. Women will still be beautiful. Men will still be handsome. People will still fall in love. Art will still be created. Dancers will still look gorgeous. It's so irrelevant. Your white skin isn't special. It's just a really rare mutation of the human expression created by living in an extremely dim environment long enough that all of the people with tans died off for lack of vitamin D. That's all it is. That's why it's a recessive trait, because it's really not necessarily better in any way, shape, or form. It's just different. So, I knew that I didn't have to have children for some genetic reason. And I thought, well, if my genes are so great, my brother and sister share them and they're having kids. So the genetics are covered in that respect. Because I really didn't feel like I was ready to raise them. I didn't feel like I had a good partner to help me raise them. And I thought, finally, if I ever am in a situation where I am mature enough to be a mother, emotionally and mentally, and I've got a partner who is equally mature, and we're financially solvent, we've got a good stable home, and we don't want to do other things that are incompatible with children like travel. We actually want to put our energy into children. I thought, I'm going to find some children that don't have a mother, because I know that I've heard it's very hard to adopt kids, but on the other hand, I also know there's a lot of them looking for homes. And I think the big difficult part about adopting a kid is that it's hard to find one that doesn't have special needs. Yeah. So you take on a special needs child. figure out what your abilities are, what kind of special needs child you think you can actually be useful for, and commit yourself to that love. Because there's no shortage of humans. So I finally, at age 24, I was dating a fellow who was completely uninterested in being a father. And I went and I started, playing up my mental instability and playing up my autism, although I didn't know it was autism yet. But just played up my mental instability and my financial insolvency to the doctors to convince them that, it was probably best for all concerned if I wasn't capable of having kids. I was so happy to get off the birth control. I got my tubes tied, and I was free, safe, and all I had to worry about was STDs. Oh yeah, we had STDs aplenty in those years too. AIDS was around. There was this narrow window of opportunity for adults to be sexually active without concern of STDs or pregnancy via the pill. And all of the STDs that were around were curable, but AIDS and herpes quickly ran up into the scene. I think it was a window of about maybe 3 or 4 years, and I was like in my early teens and a virgin and not anywhere in a situation where I would have wanted to be part of that scene. And in my later years, when I was more mature, I thought, well, I wonder what it'd be like to have an orgy. But I didn't like the kind of people who liked that kind of entertainment, so I never really ran into that. And, there's lots of experiences like walking on the moon that we just don't get to experience, and we don't know if we'd like them or not, and no regrets. I never had an orgy. I never had a threesome. I never had a threesome. Did I? No, only in my dreams. So I never had kids, and now I'm at the age when I'm supposed to regret it. And there are little things I regret. I've seen some pretty abusive mothers manage to get their kids to come over and shovel snow and do chores and be helpmates to them. And so even if I had been the kind of mother I might have been, maybe I'd still have that kid around to help me now. But would I have matured enough to be worthy of that help so that they continued, or would it be like me and my mother? My mother has a hard time getting, she's got some grandkids that will still come around and help grandma, but she has a really hard time getting young people to come and be there for her, and her odds of being invited to come live with somebody when she can't live on her own, I think are pretty small. There's no guarantee just because you have kids that they're going to look after you in your old age. So I might still be in the same boat. They might have all moved away to Halifax just to get away from me, like I moved away to Saskatchewan to get away from her. And so having kids for that reason seems a pretty stupid reason to put another human being on this planet. I really don't think there's enough room for the number of humans we have now. I honestly don't. I'd love to see tech solve that problem, but what I see is a whole lot of people staking their claim in the wilderness, putting up their little log cabins and their solar panels and saying, this is now my domain, I live alone out here, I'm going to live off of the woods and forage, and essentially clear yet more forest, kill yet more animals, dominate a section of area so that the bears and the wolves and the coyotes and the foxes and whomever no longer have dominion over that, and in many cases can no longer use it for hunting grounds, can no longer use it for breeding, for dancing, for doing the things that they do to live and thrive. So I'm not real keen on the idea of humans spreading themselves out all over the world nice and thin. And how big can a city grow? At the moment, we're making awfully polluted environments. Oh, look, I've managed to go for the whole 19 and a half minutes. Yay, I get to quit. Anyway, I never thought I'd make a good mother, and I never thought that we needed another human being, so I never had kids. That was the sound he was making. Now I get it. He's calling the two singing green singers in the living room back and forth. Yeah, I can make little calls back to them. Okay, 20 minutes.